Welcome back to another episode of Impossible Equals Impossible, a live show that was created to really share the entire story because I feel like a lot of times on social media, we really only get the highlight reel. And as I like to say, we all have impossible moments that are the catalysts for the I'm possible outcomes. And wow, the guest today is an absolutely amazing person. He's been so inspirational, and he's been the most fascinating person, quite frankly, that I've ever met. Yet he's the most kind and humble person that I've experienced. And I've gotten to know him pretty well over the past year, being part of the Outlier Project. We recently uh, spent some time together in Rhode Island, and that was just such an amazing experience. And he was probably one of the people that I got to know, I'd say, the most there. And when I think about this idea of impossible equals impossible, which has really become a lifestyle, he said something at that event that really kind of hit home for me that matched this title. And he said, "Can't isn't in my vocabulary." And I normally don't do this because a lot of times when it comes to bios, but he's lived such a fascinating life, right? And I always like to share about who people are because so often on these shows, right, people will just read off the bio. They will, tell you about all their accolades, but I want to tell you about what type of person the guest, who his name is Robert Hamilton Owens, but we call him RHO. And there were so many moments in Rhode Island where I just observed very quietly how he treated people. And with somebody who's as accomplished, and I mean, you'll see it shortly. I was just blown away with the level of character and care and truly like love that he has for people. So he's just an incredible person. I got to meet his wife in Rhode Island. That was really incredible. And the way that she spoke about him was really incredible for me. So, with no further ado, the guest today is Robert Hamilton Owens, and we're waiting. Oh, what's going on? There seems to be a lag. My first. No, I'm good. Okay. Okay. Robert Hamilton Owens is a man of many hats. He's been and done a lot: mountain climbing, radio and TV personality, keynote speaker, minister, Ironman, philanthropist, triathlete, Special Forces, Air Force, United States Air Force Special Forces, pararescueman, and father of five, to name a few. But of all the pursuits he's undertaken, there's one title that best describes this literal force of nature. Robert is the fittest and mentally toughest 72-year-old in the world. Robert was born and raised in Orange County, California, without ever having met his parents. Adopted by a California judge, Robert was raised as a special needs child who was unable to play kickball with his classmates due to the corrective shoes he was required to wear through sixth grade. In high school, Robert trained under legendary U.S. Olympic swim coach John Urbanchek in Anaheim, and later raced outrigger canoes from Long Beach to Catalina with the Dana Point Outrigger Club on his off time from lifeguarding in San Clemente. In 1973, he entered the U.S. Air Force Special Operations School with a class of 157 men to train as a pararescueman, the Air Force equivalent of a Navy SEAL. Of those 157, only 7 made it through, and which Robert was designated team leader. As an Air Force pararescueman, Robert was routinely called upon to risk his life to rescue those in perilous situations, such as climbers stranded on Denali, the highest mountain in North America. As a climber himself, Robert later attempted a winter ascent up the mountain, making it nearly 3/4 of the way up before being blown off by 80 mph under 100-degree winds. But to his credit and to Robert's understanding to this day, no one has ever made it to the top in those conditions. After Robert left the military, he began smuggling literature into the old Soviet Union and smuggling official documents back out. The documents were violations of the Helsinki Peace Accords under the Carter administration. In total, Robert has competed 12 Ironman triathlons from Florida to Oahu to South Africa and is one of few Ironmen to complete both Honolulu in 1980 as well as Kona in 2003. My goal is to be the longest active Ironman in the world, he says. The 140.6-mile Ironman, 2.5-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and 26.3-mile run, all done without a break, is among the shorter competitions Roberts put himself through. At age 65, he embarked on the 238-mile 300 of Sparta Endurance Race, an 8-day endurance race in Greece to help raise over $315,000 for the families of fallen Navy SEALs, contractors who died at Benghazi. A mere 4 days before his 66th birthday, Robert took on the SEALFIT's Kokoro 50-hour challenge, originally created to train special operations candidates. He was the oldest of the group by 25 years to finish, and at the same time became the oldest to ever complete the challenge, for which he was awarded the most advanced age ever award by SEALFIT. And then without any training, he took on the Ironman Mexico, his 12th Ironman, and in January 2018, Robert took on and completed the World Marathon Challenge, 7 marathons, 7 continents, in 7 days. But for Robert, a father of 5, none of this is done for self-aggrandizement. While he loves the challenge, he derives his greatest pleasure from helping others, motivating, educating, and inspiring them. He does it for one, such as helping a ready-to-quit Ironman competitor and cancer survivor to continue and finish the race, and he does it for many. For more than 25 years, Robert has been speaking before audiences as large as 50,000 from San Diego to Moscow on motivational and leadership topics. His past clients include the Navy SEALs, New York Jets, Baltimore Ravens, Philadelphia Eagles, South African Parliament, the Vietnamese Department of Foreign Affairs, and the Philippines Joint Chief of Staff. He's been invited to address the South African Parliament and has made 5 trips teaching officials in the Vietnamese Department of Foreign Affairs. During 22 of those years, he hosted the regional Fox Network television program Leadership for Changing Times in Reno, Nevada, where by 2 separate governor's appointments, he also served for 8 years on the Nevada State Judicial Ethics Committee. While it takes extraordinary physical condition to be in the Air Force Special Ops or to best the many Ironmans he's bested, Robert will readily affirm that success in these physical endeavors and in life in general is as much a matter of will and mental attitude as it is physical conditioning. When most have long since slowed as they approach their golden years, the fittest and mentally toughest 72-year-old in the world continues to routinely take on unprecedented challenges to help others see what can be achieved in their own lives. And with no further ado, we bring on the man, the legend, Robert Hamilton Owens.
Hey, hi, Paul. I want to meet that guy. Who's that guy?
Oh my goodness. All right, Joe. Thank you so much for being here. You've lived such a fascinating life. I think you and I have talked about this many times. And so many times, right, because of the way that the world's transformed through social media, a lot of people see the things that you've done, but it hasn't always been that way, right? And as we were going through your bio, talk to us about how your life really started out as how you kind of put it, right? You were a disabled orphan and what you've been able to do. So tell us a little bit about that journey and how in the heck did RHO get to where he is today?
Oh, gosh. You know, we all have a story and we all have struggles, and probably all of us have issues. And mine was just mine. You know, my mother gave me up and left me in the hospital, and went to this baby orphanage and sat there, I guess, for 3 months and had some lady clean my diaper, and then my parents came along and they had adopted a girl 4 years earlier. And then they came back, they said we wanted a boy. And then they saw me and they said, hey, he's got bad feet and he's a disabled kid. And she said I was cute. And so my mom said, I'll take that one. So they picked me up out of a bassinet. There were like 50 babies lying in a row, and you walk down and find the one that you want. Anyway, they took me home and I had my first bath in the kitchen sink at 3 months old. And that started a journey of, just living, but having then things begin to get in my head, like, being told that these people that are taking care of me are not my parents. And they found me someplace and adopted me. I remember the day, and I remember the clouds. I remember the weather. I remember the location of where they took me when I was 4 years old to tell me that I was adopted and I was not theirs. And it's funny how that's the first memory of my life. Meaning to the folks listening, that there are things that happen in our early childhood that stay with us for better, for worse, for good, for bad. And I remember when my parents told me, hey, you don't belong to us, but you're ours now, that I said, well, where's my mom and dad? They said, we don't know, but we've got you and we want you. And I remember again, because my mom told me later, I asked again, well, where's my mom and dad? And they said, we don't know, but we love you and you're ours now. And that's a bizarre entree, entrance into your first memory of life. And then I just worked through stuff. Some kids said, hey, don't you know you're a mistake? Third grade. And don't you know you weren't wanted? You're given away because you're a mistake. And that sort of messed with my brain. And then not being able to play with the kids on the playground and playing by myself from first through most of fifth and then part of sixth grade while everybody else played, that sort of gets in your head too. You get rejection, you get poor self-worth, you get a sense of failure. And all these are subconscious things that begin to lodge themselves in your brain. And you have to figure out, first of all, that you do have them, and then what are you going to do with them? Anyway, as it turned out, the reason that my life began to change is during each, section of my life, I had someone say, hey, Robert, I really believe in you. You're really gifted and you're really smart. And that went counterintuitive to what I was feeling and experiencing. And so in grammar school, my mom and a counselor, we believe in you and we believe that you're gifted and you're smart. And my mental circumstance did not agree with them, but I listened to what they said and I thought, they're missing it. Junior high, same. Had two teachers just say, hey, Robert, you're messed up. You're getting kicked out of class and you're in trouble all the time. But you're smart, you're gifted. We believe in you. And then I ran into my high school water polo coach, and he looked at a bunch of us young guys, and he just said, hey, hard work beats better talent, and I believe in you. And I believe that you're all champions, and we're going to prove that you're all champions. And I was just way outside my realm. But I said, okay, so I did what they did. We trained like champions. And he ended up being the U.S. Olympic coach 20 years later, and we put guys off our high school team on the U.S. Olympic team because the coach said we're going to be Olympians, we're going to be champions, and guys rose to the occasion because there was someone who believed in them and called them out and demanded that they discipline themselves and come into the vision that he had painted. And so again, I was not a championship kind of guy. I got a third place, in swimming, or my senior year, I got a couple firsts, or water polo, I got to play. But I had really good guys around me, and I was not the best for sure. And then I got into college, and I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to surf, and I wanted to ski, and I wanted to live in the back of my van. I wanted, go to the beach every day and do that thing. Because I was a beach lifeguard, and I was getting a master's degree in irresponsibility. And some pararescue guys saw me and said, "Hey, Robert, you're messed up. you don't change your lifestyle, you're going to die. You know, I was crashing cars and I'd been in jail and blah, blah, blah. You know, I was just having a great time. And they said, you're really messed up and you need to change. And if you would listen to us, there's special ops military in you. And that was a wild thing because I had already dodged the Vietnam military draft. I made sure at 19 that I had a water polo surgery on my elbow, that my arm didn't work. And so when I did not want my arm to work, it didn't work. When I wanted my arm to work, it worked. So when I got called in to go to Vietnam, I said, "Hey, I got this arm, it doesn't work." And then they tested it and they said it doesn't work. I said, "Yeah, it doesn't work." Anyway, um, I was just going nowhere, and guys were going off to Vietnam and dying, and it was just a tough time. But these two guys said, "Why don't you come in during Vietnam War? Why don't you come in and do what we're doing?" And they were always head and shoulders different, better, more excellent than the common kid that I knew. And when they said to me, "You're blowing it. You need to come in because we're mountain climbing, scuba diving, parachuting. We're going all over the world, having a great time. People open doors for us. You know, it's like getting the Heisman Trophy every day. People just step aside and say, 'You're the man.'" And I thought, well, okay, that sounds good. So I didn't have a lot of faith in me, but I had a lot of faith in their faith in me, meaning the power of positive people in your life. And there's been lots of documents written about 100 negative relationships in your life, but one positive relationship in your life can can change your life in the midst of that negativity. And these guys were at the right place at the right time. And I said, "I'll do whatever you say. I'll change my life. I want to quit bouncing around and going nowhere." I've been to college 4 times and liked it each time, but if it snowed during finals, sorry, I wasn't going to class. Or if the surf came in, it was like, I'm not going to go to class. Waves are really good. And I finally said, no, I want to change that at all costs. I want to grow and I want to change. And so I went in, and sure enough, by that time, I had trained for 6 months to get ready for the testing that would happen over, gosh, 9 months. And things worked out well, and I made the team as it would be. And so my journey is one of having snakes in my head, snakes of poor self worth and doubt and failure and fear and rejection, and then choosing uh, some point, not because I was so strong, but because others kept believing in me and speaking positively over me during my negative living. They kept nudging me, "Robert, there's more. There's more. You can do more. Change the way you think." And my life changed. And so that was the foundation of everything then the rest of my life, because I had learned that if I focused and I put my mind to things, I wasn't stupid and I wasn't dumb and I wasn't a disabled reject. I had talent, and I didn't know how much until I applied myself. So that's where I sort of come from.
Oh my goodness, that was so powerful. And I remember there was something that you said in Rhode Island about how a lot of times like we can't see what's inside of ourselves, right? And it reminds me of a saying that I have of, it's hard to see the picture while you're in the photo. And what's, I think the thing that was really so interesting to me is you talked a lot about how identity was really a challenge. And I mean, we'll dive into this later about how now as you're in your 70s, like you're experiencing that in kind of like a new way. But what's so interesting to me is when I was reading that bio, there was a, it talked about when it came to your U.S. Air Force Special Forces that 157 people tried out and only seven made it. But out of the seven, you were designated team leader, right? And obviously in the military, like to be designated team leader, it requires like a lot of responsibility. What was it that you thought that you think that they saw in you at the time that you didn't see in yourself that earned that designation?
You know, I think what separated me was that I was singularly focused. I had nothing else on my mind. There were guys going out smoking weed. There were guys going out chasing girls. There were guys going out getting drunk during training. And I was the straight guy that just said, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I don't need that anymore. You guys go knock yourself out. But that's not why I came in. And I just focused. And I focused and I focused and I was quiet. I didn't say much. And so my sergeant pulled me into his office and said, why are you always at the back of the line with your head down? I said, because I'm in the back of the line, keep my head down. I don't want to look at you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to make eye contact with any of you guys. I just want to shut up, be quiet, do my job, not get in trouble. And of course, everybody's getting in trouble all the time. And even if you weren't getting in trouble, they'd say you're in trouble. So they'd find ways to get you in trouble. Anyway, so I said, um, I have no idea what they see because I'm in the back of the line with my head down. And they said, well, they watch you. All the guys around you watch you, and you're a leader. And why won't you lead? And I said, because I'm not a leader. I've never led in my life. I mean, I'm the follower. I'm the classic non-leader type. And I don't take responsibility naturally. I try to get out of responsibility. And so um, my sergeant, he called me into his office one day and he said, young man, he's behind his desk and he said, young man, he got up behind his desk, he had a big wad of dip in his mouth in a styrofoam cup and he was spitting in that cup, and he came up to me and he looked at me and I won't say here what he said to me because it was probably vulgar if you know sergeants. But he leaned over and he put his nose on my nose. I mean, that's called invading your space. And he leaned over and put his nose on my nose and he breathed on me with that dip Copenhagen smell. And he had that all this stuff in his teeth. And he just looked at me and said, "What the F, Owens?" And I said, "Yes, Sergeant, what the F?" And he goes, "Why won't you lead?" And I said, "I don't know." And he took his nose off and backed off of me and went and sat down in the chair again, this World War II chair in this World War II barracks with no air conditioning in Texas. And he says, well, tomorrow you guys are going to jump school, and then you're going to scuba school, and then you're going to go to survival school. He listed all the schools for the next 9 months or so. He said, you are now team leader. And I tell you, I grew up in 1 second. I said, I'm team leader? He said, you're a team leader. And these men are your responsibility. And then he said, if one of these men get in trouble in the next 9 months somewhere, I'm going to come get on a plane and have your ass, young man. Do you understand me? And I went, oh, I understand you really well, Sergeant. Because he was God. He was like God. He did what he said. You jumped 10 feet. And he said, so I'm going to be paying attention to your class and paying attention. I'm going to go everywhere you go. I'm going to call them and find out what this class is doing, how you're doing. And I said, yes, Sergeant. And all of a sudden, I grew up. It's like responsibility has weight. And I just all of a sudden got called out to step up. And it was the best thing that ever happened in my life. And I didn't know. And all of a sudden, these guys did what I said. And they followed. And they didn't tell me when they were getting in trouble. I told them, if you're getting in trouble, don't get caught, just don't get me busted. And the next 9-10 months was a wild experience with this team. And we survived, and they added, I think, 6 or 7 rollbacks, guys that had been injured from previous classes to our class. And we graduated overall with a class of 17, but 7 original from our guys. And when my mom and dad saw me at the end of all that, my dad was an Army guy, and he looked up at me and He knew me before and he knew me then. And he said, "What happened to you?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't have any idea what happened." And he goes, "You're not the same." I said, "Yeah, I know." He said, "You've grown up." I said, "I think I have." And he just smiled and said, "That's great." Like it's about time. And he just said, "I'm proud of you." And he had never said he's proud of me ever before in my life. And I said, "Wow, thanks, Dad." And he goes, "You've grown up." And I said, "Yes, my mom just cried a bunch, put her arms around my neck and said, you know, you're not dead, you're alive, you made it." I'm just happy that my son's in one piece. And my life just began to change in every way from then on.
Wow, that was incredible. I want to say hello to some people who are here. Chasen, good to see you. Thanks for hopping in.
Hi, Chasen.
Yeah, Chasen, good to see you. He's a big fan of yours, RHO. I know a lot of people in the Outlier Project are.
Well,
Yaro's here. Good to see you here, Yaro, and my friend Sam's here. Welcome, Sam. Thanks for being here. It's so interesting, Arjo, because as I listen to not only you speak but also what I read, it seems like there really has been kind of one theme that your life has really been all about. Whether it's like through speaking, being an author, being a mentor, elite performance athlete, everything that you really do is all about service, right? And we kind of talked about it, how for you it's about inspiring and teaching other people. Being that your youth was like so different than a lot of the people that you work with now, do you feel like that was one of the main reasons why mentorship has become such an important thing to you, because you've had so many mentors who have kind of helped you along your journey, that for you, being able to like give back and pay it forward essentially is kind of like your way of paying them back?
yeah, for sure. I believe that I would not be probably alive if people hadn't taken time to see things in me that I couldn't see in myself. And also that when I was seeing the negative, they were seeing the potential. And they were speaking at my negativity with their potential and knocking down the walls of that poor self-worth and that failure and rejection. And they were relentless in those pockets of time where they just kept saying, "I don't care what you see, this is what we see in you." And I have felt that that is a gift that I need to give back. That when I go to jails or I go to prisons or I go to schools, I tell people about the potential I see. When I go into businesses and employees and companies and CEOs, I do leadership management work. I say to the CEO, "What's your main job here? Do you know what your main job is?" And they say, "Yeah, to make this thing run." I said, "No, the first thing you're supposed to do is have vision. And the second thing is to build a team and then believe in that team and call things out with your positivity and tell people that their potential is right in front of them and they can do so much more than they think they can do." And for the last 50 years, I've done that on purpose to place after place after place where I say, "I believe in you. You don't get it yet, but someday you're going to get it. You're really smart. You're really gifted. And you're really talented. And you're really able. And you really can. And you're just a bunch of excuses. And if you just get rid of your excuses, you'd be amazed at the kind of life that you could have and the other person that's inside of you that wants to come out. And if you'll just let them." And they look at me and sometimes they just stare at me and sometimes they go get a beer and sometimes they go start crying and sometimes I say, "Really?" And I say, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, my dad told me I was trash." My dad told me. I said, "I don't care what your dad said. He's dumb, he's stupid, he's dead. I'm telling you, you got life and you got smarts and gifted inside. Look me in the eye." And I just see the walls breaking, the cracking of their unbelief. And they want to really believe and say, really? You really see that in me? And I say, yeah. And then they go out and they change. And they begin to do things, and they write me and they tell me, I tried this and I tried that and I did this and I did that. And this was really scary, but I tried it. And I just go, I'll be doggone. They believe me. And so I think the message is, when will you believe? When do you begin to believe that there's more in you than you think? You're just an excuse away, and you're just afraid of failing away. And everybody has to fail forward. You don't get a first place when you start. You get a 15th place or a 100th place, and you keep working at it. And 50th place, and 25th place, and 10th place, third place, and you just keep knocking it down till finally you get to a place where you win. And I believe that everybody wants to have wins every day, but they have to take on their stuff. And so um, I try to encourage people to take on their stuff and believe and try, and then find some mentors and talk to people weekly and help people run with them and believe with them, and then their lives begin to change. So it's been gaining momentum for me, and now as a grandparent, it's so much fun to do more and just come up to kids, and say, what great thing are you going to do with your life? And they look at you like you're nuts. They go, I don't know. And I said, no, what great thing are you going to do with your life? You're not dumb, you're not stupid, what are you going to do? And they just look at you, and I say, take 2 minutes. What great thing are you going to do with your life? Tell me. And they go, I don't know. I never thought about it. I'm just here surviving. I said, well, I'm going to ask you now, what great thing would you like to do in your life? And they, look at me, and then they come up with something. I say, great. How can I encourage you? What's it going to take? You know, well, you understand. I got this and this, and this, and this. I say, yeah, I got it. So what? Let's go. What do you want to do? And people begin to latch onto that, and they change and they grow, and they come back and say, Mr. Owens or Coach Owens or whatever, hey, guess what happened to me? And I get emails from all over the world of people saying, you'll never guess what I did after you left, or what I believed for. I went back to college, or I got married, or I did this or that. And I just go, that's great. I just have so much fun believing on people.
Yeah, incredible. I think it's always so cool to actually get to see the impact that you get to have in the world. And my mentor always told me, she's like, if you knew the names and saw the faces of the people that you would impact, she's like, you would do it 1,000 times more often and 100 times quicker. And it really is that priceless reward, really, of like seeing how you've impacted and changed someone's life. You what I think is so fascinating about your story is that everything's so interconnected in such a unique way. And you have this incredible special forces career. And what I'm curious is for majority of your life, you've really been, for lack of a better word, like you've really been kind of like an entrepreneur, right? Speaking, writing books, doing leadership training, and all these things. How was that transition going from the military, where you're so used to like structure and rules and all these things, to then going into the entrepreneur world, where it's like, oh crap, like I had to kind of create my own rules? Like, how was your experience like early on when you transitioned out of the special forces?
I was very fortunate because um, special ops taught me about discipline, and special ops taught me about the, the truth about consistency. It's just getting little wins every day that makes for a big win down the road. And so, for the first time in my life, special ops really put me in a regiment of body, mind, and spirit, of thinking, get my spirit right, and then get my body right. When those things are all in sync, things begin to really work well for you. And so, um, what happened with me is that I was asked to leave the military. At the end of Vietnam, they had budget cuts. So you don't need all those tanks and all those guns and all those guys at the end of a war. They sit on some surplus lot. And so they said to us, okay, there's a mandate that 20% of every unit, and there were only 9 units in the world where we were. Like for us, there was 3,000 Navy SEALs, but there was only 200 of us Air Force guys because we worked by ourselves. We didn't work with teams. We were parachuted in by ourselves to make something happen medically and save somebody, rescue somebody. And so in our 9 units, they said 20% of each unit has to get out within 6 months. And so low man on the totem pole, if the older guys with seniority don't want to get out, you got to get out. So I looked around to all the older guys, and said, anybody getting out? And they all went, no. And I went, man, I don't want to get out. I mean, I like this. I'm 4 years in and let's go. And they go, you're gone if some old guy doesn't want to get out. So I said, okay, I'm going to get kicked out of this thing unwillingly. What am I going to do? And I, at that time, liked adventure books. And I read about guys doing the South Pole or the North Pole or going to the moon or something, just adventure kind of stuff. And I got this book about a guy that was smuggling in Eastern Europe during the Cold War. And he wrote about his adventures smuggling Romania and Hungary and Czechoslovakia and Bulgaria and Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Russia, and the cloak and dagger stuff. And so I wrote the guy in the book. And I said, yeah, I'm getting kicked out of the military. I'm special ops. You ever need a guy like me? Of course, I didn't tell anybody that I wrote this guy. And anyway, I got a letter back saying, tell us more. I said, well, let me donate some money to your work. That really greased the skids, And I told him that I was a pararescue guy, blah, blah, blah. And the guy said, when are you getting kicked out? And or whoever wrote me back, this guy had to work in Holland, and I wrote to an American address. So there was an American office for this guy in Holland. And anyway, he said, when you get out, blah, blah, blah. And so as I was going to get out, I am this sort of a God thing. I went home and I hitchhiked on a military aircraft from Anchorage on a military plane to McCord Air Force Base in Washington, and from McCord, Washington to Riverside, California. And from Riverside, California, I hitchhiked home in my gear. You don't want to hitchhike anymore, but I was in my uniform, and I'm hitchhiking home from Riverside at March Air Force Base, where this military free flight landed. And I'm hitchhiking home about, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I stand on the side of the freeway. Some guy picks me up, and asks me what I'm doing in my uniform with my stuff. I'm coming home, blah, blah. And when I get home, my dad gets out of bed about 2 in the morning and says, hey, I'm going to a Bible study in the morning at 6 a.m. though. I got to get up at 6 because I got to be there at 7. Do you want to go? And I'd just gotten into bed. And I went, nah. And my conscience said, hang with your dad. That's why you came home. Hang out with your dad. Your dad's never seen you normal. He's always remembered you from the past. Do whatever he wants you to do. So I went to this Bible study on this Wednesday morning. Got there at 7 o'clock for eggs and bacon, and a bunch of guys sitting around. And they had a guest speaker. And the guest speaker was this guy. Out of the clear blue, that guy that I was writing to, he was at that place that morning. And I walked up to him and I said, you know Robert Owens? And he goes, Robert Owens from Alaska? I said, yeah. And he goes, what are you doing here? I said, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm speaking. I said, oh. And at the end, he said to my dad, Mr. Owens, can I have your son this morning? My dad said, yeah, sure. Whatever I want to do is take him home when you're done. So this guy took me to his office. And he said, this is bizarre running into you like this. I was expecting to hear from you. I didn't expect you to be here this morning. And I said, I didn't understand what was happening either. Anyway, he took me into a room and he said to me, what do you want to do with your life? I said, I don't know. He said, no, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I don't know. And he then said, here's a piece of paper and here's a pencil. I'm going to come back in 30 minutes and I want you to give me the 3 things that if money was no object, if money was no object and you could not fail, what would you do? See you in 30 minutes. And so I said, wow. So I'm sitting at some desk in some room, for 30 minutes with a piece of paper. I figured it out probably in the first 15. I sat there for the next 15, just being quiet. But first 15, I wrote down, I want to have adventure. I want to travel. And I want to be involved in leadership development, helping leaders become leaders. And he came back in the room, and I showed him a piece of paper. He said, travel and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, all right, when do you get out? I said, I'm going to be out of the military in 2 months. He said, when you get out, notify me a couple weeks beforehand by this address. So I did. He said, you're going to go to Holland. So the week that you get out, go home, say hi to your mom and dad, say I'm gone, and you're going to go do some stuff. And so I said, hi, mom and dad, when I got out. Sorry, I can't stay. I'm out of here. I'm going to go smuggle in Eastern Europe. And my mom and dad said, what? And I said, no, that's okay. I'll tell you about it. So the guy got me on a plane and flew me to Denver. And in Denver, I picked up a motorhome that was custom made for smuggling. And he said, drive it to Houston. I drove it to port in Houston and put it on a boat and sent it to Holland, to Amsterdam, and then flew to Amsterdam and picked up the motorhome in Amsterdam and drove it to our little hideout there. They gave me directions to where to go. And all of a sudden I drove in this barn, and the barn was huge, and inside were a bunch of vehicles instead of cows. And all those vehicles were used for smuggling. And the big door shut behind me, and I met the guys that I was going to travel with. And 3 days later, I was on my road to Czechoslovakia and Hungary and Romania, and I was behind the Soviet Union. And anyway, so my transition time, what did I do after the military? I didn't have time to think about it. I was off to the races already, doing something focused, disciplined, locked in, dangerous of sorts. And that then started the next 5 years where I went back to college. And then every spring break and every summer break, every Christmas break, I'd go to Europe and I'd go smuggle instead of coming home. And I'd have stories when I got out, people thought, where have you been? Oh, I was in Russia, what were you doing? Oh, I was taking pictures of missile sites that are illegal, or something like that. And so my next 5 years sort of flew by. I didn't have any problems with transition at all.
That's incredible. And I think what's so fascinating about that is pretty much everything that you wrote down on that list, you essentially have done. I mean, you've traveled all over the world, and you have so many adventures, which we'll dive into later. I'm kind of curious on the timeline. So, because there's so many things that you've done. So after you left the military, you did the smuggling thing. Where did, because I know one of the things that we talked about in the bio was you had like a TV career, and you were involved in like politics and part of the Nevada Ethics Committee. Where does that really all kind of fit in terms of, I think a lot of parts of your story that everybody else knows, where it's like, at 50 you started
I'll tell you. So I graduated from college while smuggling, and then I moved to Reno, Nevada from there, and I went to work at the University of Nevada as a chaplain for football, baseball, basketball with students. And so I then started a Bible study with the football team, which turned into a local church. And that local church then grew, and I was there for 25 years. But at the same time, I was not much of a real senior pastor guy. I mean, I liked Jesus. I didn't like the church a whole lot, the structure and stuff. But anyway, I was really into social causes. And so I got involved with how can I fix our city and our county. And so with that, I began to do a lot of nonprofit work, but also then people and businesses would come and say, do you still train guys and ladies about, or teams about leadership? And I say, I don't know. Yeah. What do you want to be trained in? And so they'd say, come to talk to my staff, I'd say, what do you want me to say? And they'd say, just help us. And so I'd talk on culture and championship culture, or how to grow from a follower to a leader, or the levels of leadership inside of us personally. And anyway, so I got to do the outside secular work in the town, but I got to do the work with students. And during that time, I went to Rotary. And if you know what Rotary is, I went to my Rotary, and there was a guy that owned a TV station. And, we had businessmen and pharmacy guys and lawyers and all that stuff. And I was the only wannabe pastor there at 28 years old. And the TV guy looked at me and said, "Come sit at my table." So I sat with him. He said, "What are you doing here? Where'd you come from? Why are you here? The football team's winning. Is that because of you?" I said, "I don't know." We got talking, and he said, "I want you to come to the TV station, and I'm going to give you 30 minutes. I said, "What do you want to do?" He goes, "I don't care. Here's 30 minutes. Talk about, entrepreneurship."
Oh shoot. RHO must have disconnected. No worries, he'll be back. Oh, here we are.
We good?
Yep, you're back.
Sorry. Anyway, so somebody then said to me, "Robert, this guy's for real. He's going to put you on TV." And I said to the owner, "What do you want me to do?" And he goes, "Just talk." I said, "About what?" He said, "Leadership." I said, "Okay." He goes, "This is the cameraman. This is the producer. This is the TV. It's two cameras. Stand here and look at this thing. And I have 30 minutes." I said, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "Well, you can tape anytime you want. We'll put you on Friday afternoon or something." So I went down there on a Friday afternoon and said, "Hi, everybody. My name is Robert Owens. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I've been asked to teach on leadership. I've never been on TV before. I don't know if you like me or don't like me, but I'll tell you about my background and what I do to train leaders and what I do to try to help people grow and blah, blah, blah." And at the end, he goes, "That was great. Come back next week and do it again." So I started just off the wall, telling them stuff. And then I said, "By the way, here's the sports page. And did you see I called last week the Raiders by 7? And did you understand that I called the 49ers were going to lose by 14? Because I read the sports page to open my program." And all these people started calling up, "Who's that crazy guy on TV? He's not a bookie." I said, "Well, I got to get people interested in the TV program. And they don't want to hear about me, but they sure like me being a fool when I lose. And they sure like it when I call them out and stuff." Anyway, the guy says, "That's really great. I want to give you an hour." I said, "You want to give me an hour? What do I do?" He said, "The same stuff." Just so then I went to all the car dealerships and businesses in town from Rotary and from Chamber of Commerce and said, "What would you like me to teach your employees?" And they all had an opinion. My employees, they're late, or they're not good with the customer, or they don't have any EQ skills, all this kind of stuff. So I'd say to a guy, "What do you want me to teach your employees?" And then I'd say, "Tell all your employees to watch my TV program because I'm going to talk on it Sunday or Friday or Tuesday, whatever it was." He said, "I'll do it." So I'd say, "This is for Fred's Plumbing," or "This is from Jones West Ford, and this is what I'm going to talk about today." And these guys started cutting me checks. Like, I'll pay you to train my people to be better employees. I said, "Just send the money to the TV station." So anyway, all of a sudden I had 15, 20 businesses all telling me what to tell their employees. And so I said, "Hey, listen, you guys, you're going to get fired if you keep acting like this. And, I'd fire you too. I mean, that's stupid. I mean, this is how you do with customers, and this is eye contact, and this is listening skills, and these are EQ skills, and this is how you follow up, and this and that." Pretty soon, I had 30 businesses cutting me checks saying, "We want all of our employees to listen to you on TV." And so that went on for 24 years of no commercials, guys cutting checks, businesses cutting checks. Pay for that guy. He's the only one who tells my people that they're going to get fired. And that's entrepreneurship, making something out of nothing, finding a way to win, scratching an itch. What's the itch out there? The itch was better employee relationship or better employee performance. And guys would cut checks for better employee performance. And so I just kept saying, "Did I do good? What else do you want me to talk about?" And 24 years later, I'm in 5 prisons. I'm all the guys drunk at casinos, all the ladies of the night at my whorehouses in Nevada. I said good morning to all my policemen in the state, all my judges in the state, all my prisoners in the state. How are you doing? And that lasted 24 years. So that when I was doing that, then I ran for state legislature. Why? Because you're not supposed to. I mean, because as a pastor, you're supposed to shut up and stay in the little church. I don't want to stay in some stupid church. I want to be in the community. And so I said to my people, I'm going to run for state legislature. And half the church quit. They said, we don't want a pastor that runs for state legislature. I said, well, all right, we'll get lost. I'm going to run for state legislature because I'm going to speak out and try to make a difference in the state. And so they went, you can't do that. I said, I know. So I started knocking on doors, and I knocked on 4,000 doors when I was 32 years old with 2 babies, and started knocking on doors May 31st and stopped knocking on doors November 1st. And I did 4 to 5 hours a day, knocking on doors, letting people scream at me like, you're a Trump, or you're a Harris, and all that kind of stuff. You're not saying anything else you want to say to me. And as long as I'd stay there and listen and they'd yell and cuss me out, the more they cuss me out, the more they like me. Because I just stood there and didn't say anything. Anything else you want to tell me? Anything else you want to do? Do you want to shoot me? Do you want me to jump off a cliff? I mean, you're that guy on TV, aren't you? I said, yeah, I am. So you're a TV guy running for state legislature? You got to be a crook. I said, nah, I'm not a crook, but go ahead. Tell me how bad I am. And so I won. I won the Republican primary out of 4 guys. I spent the least amount of money. I won the primary. And then I got into the general election, and I didn't know anything about politics. And I took on a grandmother who was about 70 years old. And she sliced and diced me on my TV debate. I kept saying, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And she was saying, you're such a jerk. And what do you do? And you stand for this, and you stand for that. And I'd say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I was so polite that I just died. And anyway, I lost the election by 500 votes out of 9,000 or something like that. And so that was a good experience. But in that experience, it opened me up to the situations of our community. And I got to listen to Democrats, Republicans, and independents in Nevada, constitutionalists. I got to listen to people and their problems. And the more I knocked on doors, the more my church grew. And by the end of that summer, I had 300 more adults going to my church. And I didn't ask any of them to come to my church. I just let them yell at me. And they thought that was unique. And then they started coming to my church. And so then blah, blah, blah. And the different state legislatures and the mayors and different people would talk to me. And I started a program where I picked a topic in the state that was a hot button topic. And I said, Mr. Mayor, will you come in and talk about it? You're a Democrat. And, Mr. Ex-Mayor, you're a Republican. Will you come in and talk about it? And I'll put the two of you together and we'll dialogue, but we're not going to argue each other. We're just going to talk about it. I got my governors to come on. I got my U.S. senators to come on. I got my state legislators to come on. So I did this public forum on TV. And pretty soon the governors called me up and said, hey, Robert, we trust you. We want to appoint you to be on the state judicial ethics committee over all the judges and lawyers in the state. And so two governors did that for 10 years. So they flew me around the state as a mediator, working with all these people who were mad at each other, all these attorneys and judges and stuff. And because they trusted me, because I didn't try to be religious and I didn't try to be, praise the Lord and glory to God and all that kind of verbiage. I said, hey, what's up? How you doing, And so it was an interesting time to be involved in my state and be involved in my community, all because one guy said, I'm going to give you 30 minutes on TV, and I was scared to death. And I said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll step into it. And so much of entrepreneurship is taking advantage of some moment that's so weird and so out of the box that you go, no, I'm not equipped for that, or I can't do that. That's not my gifting, or I don't know anything about that. And then you say yes. I'll tell you, I was in the Philippines and I was at a conference, and the conference speakers were supposed to bring children if they wanted to. So I took my son. I said, "You want to go to the Philippines?" He's like 10. And there's a segue to a point. And the point is that when I took him, this guy comes to me in China. I mean, in the Philippines, and says, "Hey, Robert, I got to go to China tomorrow." I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm working pro-democracy underground leaders, the ones that are getting chased around by the Communist Party in China." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to go with me?" And I went, "No." And he goes, "Why don't you go with me? My son's here. I'm leaving my son with that guy. Why don't you leave your son with that guy and we'll disappear for 4 or 5 days. We're going to go to China and go underground and work with underground leaders." And I thought, that's pretty bizarre. And I said, "Okay, let's go." So I had no clue about an airline ticket, and flew to Hong Kong and then took a train. And off we went and got with all these underground leaders that you read about in the newspaper that are getting persecuted by the Communist Party, been sent to jail. And we're training them and coaching them. That was a big thing, 1995 to 2005. And that led to 12 trips going to China, training underground leaders in underground situations with the commies looking for you, trying to figure out where you're having your meetings, and you're having to go here for an hour and there for an hour and hide here for an hour and knock on the door for an hour and finally come. There's 100 guys hiding, and they come in over 5 hours, and all the walls have beds, mattresses up on all the walls, so all the sound is stuck in this location and nobody can hear anything. And then we just begin to teach and eat meals and teach and eat meals, and then we'd all dissipate back out and disappear, and then we'd meet 6 months later and we do it again, and we all disappear and are flying from America. To say that so much of entrepreneurship is thinking outside the box. It's thinking differently than others would think and doing things that everybody else will condemn you for because it doesn't make sense or it's not normal. But if you allow those opportunities to manifest in your life and then you step into the opportunity, you'll be amazed on what can open up, that you would never have thought of. And so I want to encourage the listeners that it's not you want to always figure things out, it's learning to think on the fly and learning to respond and have courage, sweat a bunch, but have courage and say, "This is going to be a wild one." And then you just step into it, and you never know what's going to happen. And for me, that's what I've been doing now for 50 years. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to trust that something good's going to happen out of this, and you never know. Most of the time it does. Sometimes you fall on your face, but you learn. And most people don't want risk. They don't want uncertainty. They want everything to be perfect. And things are not always going to be without uncertainty or perfect. They're going to be sloppy and wild and stuff. So,
Yeah, exactly.
segue to entrepreneurship there.
That was so powerful, and we got more friends hopped in. Enrique, thanks for being here, and my friend Leah, who's also in California. She's in Monterey, and who's here? Oh yeah, Enrique. Good to see you. Enrique says he was in Hong Kong in 94, 95. I don't know, Archo. Maybe you both were in Hong Kong at the same time, possibly. But
We probably were, but he probably didn't know me and I didn't know him.
what's so interesting is a huge part of like what a lot of people know you for is what you've done as an elite endurance athlete, and you've finished 12 Ironmans, 11 after age 50. I'm wondering, right? Because you and I had this conversation when the first time that I actually spoke to you, and I was like, out of all the things that you've done, which one was the hardest? And I thought maybe it might have been the Ironman, but you're like, no, it wasn't the Ironman. It was that Hell Week thing that you did with the Navy
SEAL
SEALs.
fit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, what is it about the Ironman that always kind of has you going back? And are you gonna do another one? Is that 12 gonna go up to 13?
I tried to do 13. Um, Really bizarre. I went back to do. I've done Mexico 6 times, and I did Mexico 6 times because I really like the Caribbean warm water swim. It's so beautiful, and so my wife likes the vacation. So if I do an Ironman and she gets a vacation, then it's a bada bing. So I just say, "Oh, would you like to go back to Mexico and you get a week or 10 days vacation in some resort? She says, yeah, you do Ironman, then we'll relax. So I went back for my 7th time of doing Mexico. And I just had a real struggle. There's a windy side of the island in Cozumel, and I hit that and I didn't have any strength, and I was just sputtering. And I got into there was a 3-lap marathon, and I just knew at the end of my 2nd lap that if I did my 3rd lap, I wouldn't make the time cut. And so I said to my wife, I don't get it. And I started throwing up a bunch of water and liquids, and I said, something's wrong with me. Anyway, I went home and had a heart attack. And so I'm laying in bed one morning, and I say to my wife, she's an ex-nurse and I'm an ex-combat paramedic, and I said, my heart has a kettlebell sitting on it. I have a dead left arm. And I lean over to my wife and I go, about 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, I go, hey, honey. She goes, what? Sunday morning, relax. I said, yeah, I know. I'm having a heart attack. And she goes, no, you're not. I said, yeah, I am. I'm having a heart attack. She goes, how do you know? I said, I got this kettlebell sitting on my chest, like I can't breathe, and I got this dead left arm. It hurts. And she goes, really? I said, yeah. I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. You call the insurance folks, make sure I'm all squared away. I'll go take a shower and shave. Today is a great day to have a heart attack. And so she just looked at me and she started freaking out. No negativity allowed. I don't allow any negative. Keep your mouth shut. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. We'll handle this, right? You and me. So I took a shower and we drove to the hospital and went in. And anyway, it was a long story. It was a fun heart attack. And I laid on the table, and I told the guy, don't knock me out. I want to watch you when you stick that thing up in my heart. And blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he goes, yeah, you have your lower right ventricle is completely closed. He said, you did your last Ironman on 3 ventricles instead of 4. And I said, oh. He said, you did pretty good for 3 ventricles, didn't die. And I said, that sucks, man. I mean, why didn't that thing work? And it was a hereditary deal. So I popped in 3 stents in my lower right ventricle, and I ran a half marathon 2 weeks later and said, hey, the engine's back working. They changed the oil and we're ready to go. So since that time, I thought I was on my mend and getting back in the game. And then I had COVID. And COVID was really hard on me, on my lungs. I had a bad case. So I've been trying to restore myself since COVID, not so much the heart attack, to get back and do number 13. And I have that in my sights. I got a game plan. I'm thinking of what I can do to get back out there with this new knee replacement. And so it seems like I'm getting my tires rotated, my engine rotated. I don't know what this is going to look like when I try to run this vehicle again, but I have plans to make a comeback somehow.
Oh my God. That's incredible. Archo, I think you're probably like the only person that I know that's like as calm as you are and just like so nonchalant. Like, yeah, I'm having a heart attack. I've had like multiple family members have multiple, and it's like I can't say I was as calm, but I mean, there's so much truth to what you're saying. Like, the more you freak out, the worse the situation gets. Like, you have to find ways to maintain calm. I want to talk about something that really like hits home on that story that you just shared. You said something in Rhode Island that was one of the things that I kind of want to know the story. Like, was there a specific event or something that happened where you came up with this quote of, one of the greatest lessons that I've learned to like endure or just, finish things and get through the pain is to deal with my pain with a smile. And I just think about that as you're talking about how you're having a heart attack, but you're like, it's fine. It's a great day. So I want to know, like, what's the story behind that? Is there like a specific event? Like, was it when you were going through one of your extreme adventures? Like, I'd love to know that.
In military, you never let someone see you suffer. You suffer in silence. And if you want to suffer good, you put a smile on it. Like, you didn't get me. You think that you've got me, and you just smile. And so one of the goals I have is that when I start to suffer a lot, I try to get a hold of my mind and my emotions and smile and say, just another adventure. Here we go. Let's see what happens now. And so I used to work out in a gym, and the gym was a Spartan type of gym. It was a SEAL, Navy SEAL type gym where you were not allowed to make any noise at all. And the only noise you're allowed to make when you're really working hard was to smile at somebody and say, good job to the guy next to you. So you couldn't grunt and you couldn't go, ugh, you couldn't make noise. All you could do is smile at the person next to you and say, easy day, looking good, feeling good. You should be in Hollywood, and just smile as you suffer. And once you get trained in getting a hold of your mind, it doesn't matter if you're in pain or if you're in joy, you have a choice of what to wear on your face. You get a choice. And so once you begin to retrain your brain to enjoy suffering and think about working through suffering, it's not going to kill you. It just makes you miserable. And miserable isn't going to kill you. So make miserable your friend and enjoy the ride. And once you learn to think differently than the common man, common woman, the common person that wears on their face how they, all over the place. You just look at people and say, they're emotionally unstable. And so once you learn to take yourself on and discipline who you are and get control of your mind and your emotions, then you don't have to be a reactor. You can react by not reacting. And the start of non-reacting is to smile and say, no big thing. Hurts like hell. No big thing. Hurt before, hurt again. It's just another experience in pain. And you learn to work through it. And we train our guys that, if you're shot, if you're broken leg, whatever, what are you going to do? Die? You better figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to win and how you're going to come out of this thing. And if you don't get your act together, you may be alone and die. So you need to think about survival in the terrible, difficult situations and figure out what you're going to do. Think on your feet and figure things out. And we try to help people do that. And I've been doing that now for 40 years or so. I try not to let people know what's going on inside of me, especially if it's painful, especially
Yeah.
like I'm angry. I don't want to let people know I'm angry. I don't want to say what I really want to say. I don't want to look like I really want to look. I want to just mask off and say, nothing, no problem, all good. It keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah, powerful. I love the way that you said that, because one of the things that I started doing, so I've been practicing gratitude daily for going on 4 years now. And one of the things that my mentor taught me was when you have like falling outs, or, when you have bridges or, relationships that you go your separate ways, a lot of times, like, the first reaction that a lot of people have is they're upset, there's resentment. And one of the things that she taught me was write down 10 things that you're grateful for about that person, and it just changes your perspective and the way that you view things. So I love that share.
Sure.
Oh my goodness, when
I
we
mean,
go go
like when
ahead.
you're raising kids, hey, don't get mad at your sister, or don't throw that at your brother, or why are you reacting like that? Because I want to, or they did. Well, so what? Get over it. Stay in control. And so you can work with people, but they don't like it because they want to do what they want to do, what they feel at the moment, and that means that they're a slave to their feelings. So it's a thing to work on.
Yeah, powerful. And I'm really curious about this one specific year of your life. And when you were telling me all the things that you've done in the like extreme sports arena, I didn't realize that you did a lot of them in the same year. So kind of, if I'm not mistaken, you did the 300, right? The race
Yep.
in it was age
Greece.
66, I believe, right? You did the 300 of Sparta, Greece thing. It's like it was like 239 miles or something over. Was it like 8 days? I believe. Is that what
Yeah.
it
8
was?
days, 238 miles.
Yeah. So you did that. You rowed across the Atlantic for 40, was it 44 days consecutive?
A little bit different. I rode across the Atlantic this last year. So
Oh,
the 5 things that I did at 66 was the
yeah.
Greece thing, 238 miles. And then I did a beach marathon where you run, swim 26 miles along the coast. And then I did that Navy SEAL 50-hour thing. Um, then I did my 12th Ironman 3 weeks later, and then I did the 777, seven
Mhm.
marathons, 7 days, 7 condos. I did those 5 things within 7 months. And the reason that I did those is that once you get into a certain level of shape, you might as well max out and utilize that shape because you never know when you're going to be in that kind of shape ever again. So you're in a moment, and there are times in people's lives when they're in a moment or a season. And that season, like winter, summer, spring, fall, that season's not going to last forever. It's only going to last for this period of time. And you better maximize that time, that moment, because you don't know if it's ever going to come back again. Or if it's fall, you better enjoy fall and max it out because you don't know how long winter is going to last. And people have winters in their life. Things aren't going good, and there's no opportunity, and there's discouragement, and it's a tough time. And you know there's a spring, but you just wish it would get here soon. But it's not coming. And so there are different times in your life where if you're not aware of the opportunity in front of you, you'll miss it. And when I got in that kind of shape, then people begin to say, well, while you're in shape, why don't you do this? And while you're in shape, why don't you do that? And none of them were planned except for the one thing, which was the 50-hour Navy SEAL nonstop thing. But while I trained for that, then these other folks saw me and said, you want to go to Greece? You're in shape. Do you want to run 26 miles in the sand down the beach and swim? No, not really, but might as well. What the heck? And then you want to do your 12th marathon? Yeah, why not? It's easy since I'm in this kind of shape. 7 marathons, seven. Yeah, I don't know about that one. That's weird. But yeah, since I'm in shape, I'll try that one too. And then that season closes. Your body changes, or relationships change, or job employment changes, and you can't go back. And so it's really important for you younger guys to know that you need to figure out seasons in your life because you'll miss them or you'll shorten them by a stupid decision. It was so good. I wish I hadn't gotten that car wreck. I was so good at time, but I shouldn't have said that to my boss. That was really good with my wife, and then I blew it by this. So you got to be careful that when things are going good, you understand it and you appreciate it. You have gratitude for it because life isn't always perfect. And then you move on to the next season and you don't know how long those seasons are going to last. You wish, gosh, I wish I could get back to spring and summer. Yeah, well, now you're in fall and now you're in winter. And sometimes winter lasts 2 years or 4 years, and it gets real discouraging when you get stuck in those kind of things. You just don't know how to get out and get things better again. That's what I mean.
No, yeah, that was powerful. And the thing that blew me away as well, one of the things that you said was going back to this idea that everything that you've really done throughout your life is really like in service of something. It pretty much like everything beside yourself. Like, we read it in the Bible. Like, you don't do all this stuff for self aggrandizement. And I remember when we were having a conversation and you were telling me, like, do you know the reason why I do these things? Because I wanted to give back to organizations, or I wanted to have more impact, but I didn't want to be, I would basically be at the back of the line, right, with like everybody else. And you were kind of saying that these feats and events that you can do are really like one of those things that put you in this one of one type of thing, where it's like people were like, oh wow, he's done that, like I want to at least hear what he has to say, type of thing. And what's so interesting about it, what I'm just curious from a personal perspective, like just like thinking about that, right? Like 238 miles over 8 days. Do you have like a break, or is it all just like straight through? How exactly did that process work? And was it as hard as it like sounds?
The answer is yes, it was. It was stupid. You don't know. Someone says you're going to do 238 miles. Actually, it was the movie 300. If you remember the movie about Greece, and it was the 300 movie. The legend is that the Spartans went to fight the Persians in Thermopylae, and it was 238 miles away, and it took the Spartans 8 days to get from Sparta to Thermopylae. And so no one had ever, the Greeks had said nobody's ever redone that. And the Greek government and news and history books said no one's ever done that. So for the Navy SEAL Foundation, for guys that died in Libya at the city of Benghazi, these Navy SEAL contractors, we did an event to raise money for the families left behind because the guys died. And so they told us to train a certain way. You know, we're going to be running trails, and you're going to be running trails about 30 miles a day for 8 days. And we'll drop you off at 6 in the morning, and you'll go to 4 or 5 at night, and a car will pick you up and take you to a hotel, and you'll wash and pass out. Then some car will pick you up, the next morning and drop you back off. Anyway, so you start that thing. And the challenge was, of course, that it was never on trails. They made a mistake. It was all on asphalt, and it was all really hot asphalt. So the training for trail work with trail shoes, you get over there. Where's the trails? They paved them over. And you go, oh, you paved over all the trails? Yeah, sorry. And so now we're running on hot asphalt, right? You ever seen guys laying asphalt out in the summertime with the big trucks, and they're standing on that hot asphalt and it's smoking up. And the guys have the really thick boots to try to keep their feet from blistering. Well, we had the wrong kind of shoes for asphalt in the heat. And anyway, you flex and you grow. But anyway, you do these 238 miles at 30 miles a day, and you have to finish. I mean, they get mad if you don't finish pretty quick, So they pick you up. Everybody here, and you go count. Yeah, I guess we're all here. Then you get to go to a hotel and eat or take a shower. And so it was as hard as I thought, and much more, because all of us had problems with our feet because they all got blisters the first day. And I did not know that the first day would be a 5-hour climb out of Sparta. You go in a valley and you climb this hill. And so you walk this hill for 5 hours. And then on the backside, you run down it 4 hours. So your feet are all just hurting from going up 5 hours. And then you ran down. And for me, I popped both my big toenails off on the first day on the downhill. My feet were so swollen in my shoes that as I was running downhill, they kept hitting the front until finally I could feel them go boop, boop. And both big toenails just pop off the first day. And then blisters. And so what do you do for the next 7 days when your feet are blistered and your toenails are popped off? Well, you suck it up and you find a way to win. Anyway, so it was something that I don't want to do again.
I can see that. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. I'm surprised that wasn't like one of the hardest things that you've done. That just sounds fun.
Well, that's just running.
Yeah.
Running is running. Running is whatever. You like it or don't like it, or you do good or don't do good. That Navy SEAL thing, that 50-hour nonstop thing with Navy SEAL instructors, that was the hardest thing.
Yeah.
And the goal was at 66, I wanted to see if I could get as in good a shape in my 60s as I was in my 20s. Because I'm trying to study this aging thing. What does age look like, and what can you do, or what's your limits? So I decided that I was going to train for this Navy SEAL thing to see if I could get as good a shape in my 60s as I was the pararescue in my 20s. And that then opened up all kinds of stuff, because if you're in that kind of training, people will talk to you about other things you probably ought to do. They're a lot easier. And those were the other 4 things. So that thing was mentally tough and
Yeah,
physically.
that's incredible. I know we're winding down. I just have a few more questions left for you. Your book's called Beyond Average, and you talk about the 20% principle. It to me that's such an interesting concept because I've heard of like 10x, and you hear of like all these other things. What was the whole idea behind the 20x principle? And I know the inspiration for the book was basically people wanted to know like how you were able to do a lot of these extreme things that you had done with the Ironmans and all that type of stuff. But talk to us a little bit about what actually is the 20x principle and how can people start implementing that in everyday life.
We teach when we train our special ops guys, we say that there's 20 times more potential in them than they've ever allowed someone to bring out of them. Meaning you can't do it. You can't go to the 5%, 10%. You can't do 20 times in your own head. Why? Because there's too much pain. There's emotional pain, there's social pain, there's relational pain, there's financial pain. I mean, when you really focus on something, it's painful because people say, why are you being so extreme? Or why are you being so weird? Or why are you being so focused? And you say, I have this goal. And they say you're nuts. Or your wife says, I don't like it. Or your husband says, you shouldn't do that. And you get all this pressure on you to stop, like an Olympian. Why do you have to do it again for 4 years? I'm going to focus and be focused on me for 4 years. Well, that's a lot of time to be pretty selfish and focused. Yep, I'm going to focus for 4 years or 4 more years. So you can't do that unless you're in the right environment with a coach that's going to help you stay on track and think the right thoughts during the pain and suffering of the training. And so when we say there's 20 times more potential in each listener listening to me, but they have to have someone that they trust tell them how to do it and then bring it out of them. And then that bringing out, whether it's a 3-month period or 5-month or 5-year period, that thing is going to be painful because you're going to have to do stuff that's really hard mentally and emotionally and physically and maybe relationally. And so, who do you trust or who do you ask to mentor you to greatness? And if you knew that that person would bring greatness out of your life, would you submit? And would you say, okay, I'm yours, train me? And that's what an Olympian does when they say, strength coach, train me, or skills coach, train me, or mind coach, mental control, mind mastery coach, train me. I submit you're going to take me places that I would not normally want to go. And I'll even have excuses along the way that when I get there, you'll say, oh, you don't want to do it, do you? Like Michael Jordan had a coach who said, I'm not going to be your friend. If you want to be the greatest of all time, then I'm not your friend. Because I'm going to take you places, demand things of you that you don't want to do because you don't know what it costs to become the greatest of all time. And he had this coach, he hired this coach, and Michael Jordan paid that guy to not train anybody but him. And people said, train us. Nah, Jordan says he only trains me. And he had Michael doing stuff that the team wasn't requiring Michael to do, but this guy was requiring of Michael while on the Bulls. We don't care what the Bulls doing. This is what you're going to do. And so the 20x principle then is that whole thing of A, how much do you want to grow? And how much do you want to become? And how bad do you want it? And what are you willing to put aside to retain that? And what are you going to do when you don't feel like doing it? And you're going to allow someone to speak into your life and say, I know you don't want to do it. Do it anyway. Again. And when we get young men, we get to say that to them. Why are you here? What's your goal? What's your why? And then how bad do you want it? We have inner city kids, we have rural kids, we have all kinds. We have, blacks and Hispanics and Puerto Ricans and whites and Asians and Indians, Mexicans. We have all kinds of kids. They all look at you and say, we want to be a Navy SEAL. We want to be Air Force Special Warfare. We want to be a Ranger. Great. There's been 1,000 other kids who have been here before you. They've all quit. So what makes you think you won't quit? And they go, I don't know. And we say, we don't think you want it as bad as you think you want it. Because once we get into the training, most of you are just going to quit. And you'll say, I didn't want it this bad. So there's something about the 20X principle that letting someone bring out of you, and you trust them, and it's going to be painful. And you're going to have to say, help me work through the pain. Help me stay in the game. Help bring my potential out when I want to quit, because the mind will quit before the body does. And so then we teach people how to breathe and get control of their emotions. We look them in the eye and say, do you want to quit today? And we say, don't answer it until you really believe it. Because if you say yes, you're gone. And they take a deep breath and look at you, and they blink, and you want to quit? And they go, no. Good. Then this is what we're going to do. And you do that month after month after month after month. You want to quit today? It'd be a great day to quit. Like my instructor of special ops, he said, listen, we've been doing like an 18-hour day. We'll close maybe with this story. He said, listen, I really want to go home. I want to go home with my wife and have a nice meal and have a bath, go to bed. And you guys are a pain in the ass. And listen, I'm done with you guys, but we're going to go until 8 of you quit. Everybody's just looking at each other, So we're going to go all night. That's what it takes. But we will not quit until 8 of you quit. And it's honorable to quit. You're helping your fellow man out here. And, we won't think bad of you. And you'll be doing yourself a service. You get to go home and take a shower. And these guys will be done, too. I just need 8 of you to quit. And we were like 3 months into training. I mean, every day, 4 a.m, 8 o'clock at night, 6 days a week, 6.5 days, 5.5 days a week. And the coach said, so we're just going to keep going now. Let's let 8 of you quit. And 8 guys raised their hands and said, okay, we'll quit. And we go, no, no, no. And the guys go, that's all right. Because the coaches gave them an out. And go turn in your stuff. And tomorrow morning, we'll see you in the morning. And you can tell us how you're a quitter. So 8 guys raised their hands, and they went home. He said, okay, I guess we're done for the day. Go home, take a shower. We'll see you in the morning. And sure enough, the next morning, he had 8 guys standing at attention. And he said, I just want to see the quitters one more time. Why'd you quit? And all of them went, I don't know. Well, you quit. Thank you very much. Get out of here. You're just pukes. You're just quitters. Get out of here. We don't have quitters in here. And then he started working us out again. And they started whittling that 150 down. One day at a time till you got 10 left. Anybody want to quit? No. What can I do I need to get down to 7. Anybody want to quit? No. And finally, you work through the fight. Then he knows that this group will not quit. You'd rather die than quit. And he goes, good, okay, I'll give up now. We're all good, and move on.
Wow.
So that's a 20X principle.
That's incredible. Last question, Joe. So you said a quote, I want to say it was probably like a couple months ago on one of our trainings, that you were the top advisor for the Outlier Project. And you said that when you know who you are, you don't need to be seen. And back in Rhode Island, there was an interesting analogy that you said about how in many ways, if you really want to be great, it's going to require you to be alone a lot. And then you had made a reference to this saying of you would much rather live alone in alignment than live with other people and be compromised. And I'm really curious, like, how did that come to pass? Do you have like a story or experience where you realize, like, because you really do run your own race. I mean, you're so not concerned on what other people are doing and all these things. Like it really is all about, you and the impact that you create. I'd love to know, like, how did you kind of get to that place?
A leadership principle is this: the higher you go in leadership, the more alone you're going to be. Because the higher you go in leadership, the more responsibility you have. And the more responsibility you have, you can't give it to the person on the left or the right. It weighs on your shoulders. And everybody wants to be a leader and everybody wants to be paid big bucks, but nobody wants the responsibility. And so you'll learn that the higher you go towards the CEO suite, or the higher you go in whatever that anarchy or not anarchy, that hierarchy is that you're going in, people will view you differently and not like you when you make the leadership calls and the hard calls. And if you don't like being despised or misunderstood or talked about, then don't step into a place of responsibility. Don't be an NFL coach. Don't be the coach of the Dodgers or the Yankees, because you're going to be solidly criticized. I was listening to Chris Cuomo on the news last night, and he was being told what a scab he is for doing this town hall meeting with Vance tomorrow night. And he said, I learned long ago in the media that if people liked you, don't let it go to your head. And if people hate you, don't let it go to your head, because you're supposed to be hated and liked at the same time. And if people like you too much, you're not doing your job right. So don't believe anybody who says nice things to you, because they're going to tell you later that you're a jerk. And don't be a jerk, believe the jerk all the time, because other people are going to like you sometime. And if you can't stand being alone in your skin, then don't put yourself in that position. And once you learn that you've got to be your boss, you've got to be the boss inside of you. And people will not like it when you're your boss, because you won't bend to their wants, because you want something more than you want their approval. Here's a thought. And if you need people too much, you can't lead them. If you need people's approval and friendship and understanding, if you need that too much, you can't lead them. A general sending guys into battle who are going to die, that's a heavy weight that he knows he's sending X amount of people at Normandy to die for the bigger battle of getting to Berlin. So 3,000 men died because of Eisenhower, but he had to get to Berlin. He said, I'm going to sacrifice 3,000 to get to Berlin. Those are heavy kind of decisions. And so there's something about learning to be alone inside of you and not need people's approval and not needing strokes and not needing people all the time to tell you how great you are and pat you on the back and all that stuff. It's nice, but it's shallow. When the push comes to shove, can you handle being alone in your skin? So a long time ago, I began to learn about being alone. I mean, I'm with people all the time, but I'm running my life and I'm running my decisions. And if they like it, cool. And if they don't like it, cool. It's okay. I still like them, appreciate them. But if you can't learn to be alone, which is different than lonely, being alone is where you're learning about self-sufficiency and you're learning about courage and you're learning about strength and you're learning about tough pressures. And you're just saying, I can't share it with others because they don't get it. They don't understand the position I'm in. And if I go ask people for, what would you think? What would you think? They can't give you good advice because they're not in your position. They can't give you, they don't understand your world. And so most men don't want to be alone in their heads. And most women don't want to be alone in their heads. They want, what do you think? You think I did the good thing? Or how's that going? We want approval. And we all want approval. But if you need approval too much, then you'll be a slave to people's opinions. So that's
Wow.
where I learned to be alone.
Yeah, what a wonderful way to end the show, Archo. Thank you so much for your time. This has been incredible. I think your story really is the epitome of, impossible equals impossible, and you've just shared so many experiences of where showed that demonstrated, that can't isn't in your vocabulary. Before we close, I'm going to hand it to you. Any final thoughts, anything that you want to share? Like, where can people find you? I'm going to hand the full screen over to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure, Paul. The full screen over to me. Hi, everybody. Hey, if I can help you, my email address is my name, Robert Owens, with two S's, OWENSS at Yahoo. My website is my name also. It's roberthamiltonowens.com, roberthamiltonowens.com. And if you want to call me, it's 949 542 9600. Again, 949 542 9600. And I get calls from all over the world. I get emails. I got people making comments, and it's fun. And I get to meet some really neat people. So if I can encourage any of you, feel free to reach out to me. I've got my O hat on for my outliers. Paul and I are both in the Outlier Project. That's where we met. You got to check it out. May want to even be a member. And Paul, and I would like you to do this. I'd like you to comment to Paul anything good that you got out of this podcast. I'd like you to say, hey, Paul, I like that Owens guy, or I don't like that Owens guy. And this is what I liked about him, or this is what I didn't like. So you give Paul feedback on this podcast and what you thought about this podcast, so he can then know what to do in the future and learn more about you that are listening. So please comment to Paul your thoughts about this podcast, and feel free to comment me, and you can tell me I'm a jerk, and it's okay. It's not the first time. And happy to meet all of you, and enjoy the season that you're in, and know that there's another season coming. And if it's a spring or summer season, I hope it's a lengthy one. All right, that's enough for me. See ya.
Powerful. Thank you so much, Arjo. And to everyone, definitely go connect with Arjo.